Hello, friends, strangers, lovers of books and science fiction, and both of those things in combination. This is attempt number 200 or something like that to review Timeslip. So before I start talking about the book, I'm going to talk about why I picked this book off the shelf in the first place. I first picked it off the shelf in the charity shop because it looked so pulpy and science fiction-y, and it was based on a children's science fiction series from the United Kingdom that I had never heard of, and it's so dated looking, 1970s. You'd expect it to be dated. I had low expectations. And I've recently completed two absolutely spectacular books, both of which I've reviewed. Neuromancer by William Gibson, which is a classic in its own right, in its own time, and in every time it's the genesis of the science, of the cyberpunk type genre. And The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany, another absolutely poetic, magical, amazing book. Now, for me, I've found that if I've read 2 or 3 books in a row that were absolutely brilliant, a bad thing happens to me. On the other hand, on one hand, I've read all these wonderful books. On the other hand, any other book has to keep to the same standard, or I start to get really picky. And if I'm not careful, I'll turn into a critic or something who's talking bad about perfectly good books simply because my expectations are too high. Books don't deserve that from me. I don't deserve that from books. So if I can't find a book that is at least as good as the ones that I've read, the only other thing you can really do with that is go sliding down in the other direction and go straight for pulp, a book that you expect to be bad. You have no expectations, or few expectations. Those expectations are low. If they're disappointed, hooray, you've had a good book. If they're not disappointed, you got what you are expecting. So that's why I picked up Timeslip to read after The King of Elfland's Daughter. And it is surprisingly not bad. I had pretty minimal expectations from it, but it would have exceeded my expectations even if I had had them. So, because I keep getting this review wrong in one way or another, I will start with why it was... I made notes this time. I will start with why it was written. And who by? Who by, I've got to say, is a bit of a mystery from my point of view. This Pan book from 1970, the internet tells me, was written in haste to be released at the same time as the TV series. Who wrote it? Well, Goodreads claims that it was written by Bruce Stewart. That Pan Books published this novel based on the children's TV series and based on the first 2 episodes of the series, The Wrong End of Time and The Time of the Icebox. It's a straight retelling of these stories. Very little was altered to accommodate the prose format. It is indeed practical writing. It is writing to get the story across, not for any other purpose. It works well in that format. Well done, very well crafted, but it's nothing exceptional. So, front cover of the book depicts a scene from The Time of the Icebox, which is the second episode and the second part of the book. It shows Dr. Bookoff, played by John Bancroft, examining the inert bodies of Liz and Simon, who I haven't discussed yet. Now, the back shows the 2 time travelers as well. Now, Goodreads claims that it was written quickly to accommodate the short lead-up time given by the publishers, and there's no actual author credit on the cover or inside the book, but the adaptation of Bruce Stewart's scripts fell to Ruth Boswell's husband, James. Now, if you go to Wikipedia, you will find that in Wikipedia it's credited to James Boswell. Does that mean that James Boswell wrote it on his own without his wife, Ruth? It seems unlikely to me, because Ruth was credited as having been given the brief to write it by the ATV executive producer. I've forgotten who they are. But at the time, Doctor Who was very popular as a children's series by the BBC. They wanted another alternative. And also, Ruth Boswell at least seemed to feel that Doctor Who had gotten way too off the cuff, too fantastical, and wanted to bring a little bit of science back into the mix. Now, the main theme of the series is meant to be the way humankind uses and abuses science and technology. I've got to say that that's a pretty generic notion. I didn't get it that way. I just saw it as a fun, timey-wimey adventure. Sorry, I know this was meant to be in opposition for Doctor Who, but timey-wimey, that's the best way to describe it. Now, because Boswell and ATV, whoever they are, wanted to give a more everyday feel. They had protagonists that were everyday, but they also wanted to give it a more scientific background. And it says that much of the show's time travel concepts were based on the book An Experiment with Time by J.W. Dunn. A book that I haven't encountered before. But it was first published in 1927, and Dunn was an aeronautical engineer and philosopher. He had concepts about what precognitive dreams were about and combined them with the theory of time. And his key conclusion was that precog visions foresee future personal experiences by the dreamer and not just general events. And that theme does come into the series of Timeslip, and I'm not going to tell you how. I reckon you should read it. I reckon you'd enjoy it. I reckon my bird's very, very active today. Very active. Okay, so where are we at? We don't know who the author is. I personally think it's more likely to have been Bruce Boswell, possibly Ruth Boswell. But I'm not committing to that. What actually happens in it? Okay. So there were 4 episodes in one series. It was never renewed for a second series. The first one is The Wrong End of Time. And The Wrong End of Time is a lot of fun. It hooks you in instantly with a little prequel where you've got a farmhand sitting there eating his lunch, and he sees a kid called Sarah who's known in the village as someone who lives in a world of her own. I don't know what's politically correct for that these days, but anyway. So he sees her walking across the field, and she's feeling her way as if there's a wall there that he can't see. Then she comes to a gap, her hand goes in, and she just vanishes out of the field. The farmhand goes screaming to the police about missing people. A report comes through to Naval Intelligence and lands on the desks of Mr. Traynor, who we find has got a link to St. Oswald's. So he goes up to St. Oswald's to figure out what is happening with girls vanishing in fields. And when he gets there, he meets Frank Skinner, who's doing a caravan. We find that Frank and his wife, his daughter Liz, and a boy called Simon, all going to be travelling in the caravan. In the meantime, Liz and Simon have gone up to look at the old naval base with all its no entry signs and big stay away type signs. And they too encounter this soft yet hard barrier in the field and fall through. And they fall through, it's obvious to us, obviously, because we know what it's about, that they've fallen from 1970 through to 1940. They're in World War II. The experimental base in St. Oswald's is an active base here, and it's doing something with radar. We don't know exactly what. As the kids fall through, they see these Germans that have just cut the barbed wire fence and are going in to the research station. They try to warn the people. The Navy? The sailors? The terminology is too 1970s for me. I can't always get it. They try to warn them. They aren't believed. They're taken captive by the people who own the base. Then they're taken captive by the Germans when the Germans come and take over the base. There's a whole lot of spy, World War II, thrillery type action. It's pretty good, really. There's a lot of back and forth, and it has dated in some places. We wouldn't expect people to do the things that these people do anymore. Maybe they would have in the 70s. or in the 40s, I'm not sure. Anyway, eventually Liz and the other girl, Sarah, managed to escape back to our time, where they encounter Trainer, who is Commander Trainer back there, but doesn't remember them, obviously, because it happened years ago. The modern Mr. Trainer manages to convince them to go back and find out what happened to the secrets that were in the base. So they go back, and it all comes to a pretty cool conclusion. It's fun, and there is a certain amount of science in there. Now, the science is light, it's not hard science fiction. But apparently while they were developing it, they actually contacted Geoffrey Hoyle, who's a science fiction writer in his own right, in order to give a polish to the experiment with time done theory. And of course, Geoffrey Hoyle was the son of Fred Hoyle, who was a physicist. I've got a book of his, Geoffrey Hoyle, which I read, I think, last year, and a couple more that I haven't got to yet. So your science fiction is pretty solid, and there's also that mental dream psychology, forward and backward and future time happening. It's good. I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, the second part of this book is The Time in the Icebox, which this picture belongs to. Right at the end of the first adventure, when Liz and Simon were trying to come back from 1940 to the present, for a brief time they went into the future. And in The Time in the Icebox, Mr. Trainer comes and basically emotionally blackmails them into going through that wall again. He's tried, but he doesn't go. To this future where he's recognized the name of a biologist from the present time. Now, The Time of the Icebox is actually got more interesting science for me because it is more about biological science. It's revealed to be happening in Antarctica in year 1990, so the far future when this was written. There's an International Institute for Biological Research, and there's a lot of mysteries that happen there. Simon and Liz, just before they escape, Liz sees her mother, but her mother as she is, not as her mother as she would be 20 years in the future. And then she meets someone who hates her on sight in a strange way. Beth is described as this very cold, icy woman and strange. What's happening there is strange. You've got a head scientist, Morgan C. Devereaux, played by John Barron, by the way, who is in charge of everything, but he also links mentally to the computer, and we later learn that there's more biological strangeness going on around Devereaux. He trusts Beth, but not so much anyone else, and he keeps saying that everyone is making errors. But are they? Is there something more sinister happening? Yes, there is. So the biological factors here are the fact that a longevity drug called HA57 is something that everyone on the base has been subject to. They have to enter their personal biometrics, and then they're issued this drug, which is why Liz's mother, Jean, who is actually there, hasn't aged. But there's other things happening as well. There's organ replacement. There's a whole heap of things that I won't spoil. The ending to the second one is spectacular. The ending to the first one is good, but the ending to the second one is spectacular. So I would imagine that there is another book out there. In case I haven't already told you in this particular review, I have in some of the other 200. This book was produced in a hurry, and it actually served as a prop in one of the episodes where it was a book on the shelf in the background to what was happening. And in extra news, Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter in 1999 had a review where they were talking about the top 50 SF TV series of all time, and they mentioned Timeslip. So if Sir Terry recommends it, that's all the recommendation I really need. If you think anything in here sounded intriguing, I suggest you go out and read it. Pulp, sure, but good quality pulp. And the science in it is actually far more interesting, if not necessarily more believable than many other books that are more invested in being science fiction. So, have you read it? I feel like unless you're one of those 2 to 15 people on Goodreads, you probably haven't. Have you heard of it? I know there's some UK people out there. Did you ever watch the series? I tried looking at a little bit of it on YouTube. It's very, very 1970s with that embarrassing overacting that they used to think was good, and children being so very childish, which at 15 you start to think they might be a bit more mature. But for its time, I believe it was great, and obviously if Sir Terry and Baxter both think the science was good, I'll believe them. Thank you very much for watching. I think this might actually be the one. This might be the winner, unless the ceiling collapses in the next 3 seconds. That goes on YouTube, so thank you for watching. Read good books, maybe even, if you could find it, this good book. And if you know anything about the series, tell me. Tell me if you watched it and enjoyed it. Tell me if you've ever seen the second book. There were 4 episodes to this series. I feel like there must be a second book out there. And I do kind of want to hear what it was about, even if I never find it. Have a great day. Read good books.